Welcome into Senior Living Live. My name is Melissa, and we thank you for joining us for another one of our very informative bi-monthly webinars where we invite the experts to discuss all aspects of senior living, and we invite you watching to be a part of our discussion. Today, I am thrilled to introduce you to our guest speaker, John Dove, a financial advisor with Edward Jones. He is here today to discuss ways you can avoid common scams targeting seniors. John will, of course, be happy to answer all of your questions at the end of the webinar. To submit your question to John, you can scroll down to the bottom of the screen where it says Q&A, type your questions in there, and we will make sure to get all of those answered at the end of the webinar. Now I will turn this over to our guest speaker, John Dove. John, take it away.
Thank you very much, Melissa. Thank you all for having me today. This is a topic that I think is very important to discuss today, Outsmart the Scammers. So first, I want to thank you all for joining because it means you're taking one step into trying to educate yourself about what's out there, what kind of scams are going on out there, because like it or not everyone has good intentions. And that's what really we're here to do today, is discuss some scenarios, give you some examples, and I hope really you can walk away today feeling confident that you'll know what actions to take if something like this were to happen to you. A little bit about myself real quick too. Appreciate Melissa. Thank you all for having me. Again, John Dove. I'm with Edward Jones Investments. We're a national financial advising firm. I'm actually located in Maryland. And I grew up here. I grew up actually in Maryland here all my life. Grew up on a family farm. And I'm married. I have two little girls, Olive and Mabel, 2 years old and 4 years old. So we have a pretty exciting household right now. So in any case, let's go ahead and get started and jump right into it. And I'll kind of give you a little bit of a breakdown of what we're going to talk about today. The topic today is Outsmart the Scammers. I really want to start with the number one takeaway. And, this will be reiterated throughout the entire presentation. But the number one takeaway I want you to think about here is if something like this were to happen to you, don't be embarrassed to share with somebody and ask somebody, hey, does this seem right? Bring it to someone's attention, because the number one thing is if this is happening to you, someone will do it to someone else. And you want to protect your friends, your family, or anyone. You don't want this to happen to anybody. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to start with some numbers, and hopefully you can see the screen good. So let's start with some of these numbers, and some of these are just facts here. So starting out with a 2019 study, over 14.4 million people in 2018 had their identities stolen, either individually or even through a data breach. The next one, 2.9 billion. So 2.9 billion dollars was lost. This is strictly for elderly. Annually from financial abuse schemes. So that's the loss. Next would be the 1 in 10. So 1 in 10 elderly people are victimized of some type of fraud or scam. However, only 1 in 14 actually report it. It's so important to report this stuff. All right. And nearly 90% of abusers are people that the victim trusts. That's so powerful, because it's not not always is it some stranger, not always is it somebody that you don't anticipate. It's someone that you trust over 90% of the time. So we really need to be cautious and wary of things like this. So that's why it's so important to be prepared and take critical steps to protect yourself and protect people that you care about. And it's important, again, if something like this happens, you should report it. Absolutely. Otherwise, that person won't be stopped. All right, so a little bit of overview for today. I'm gonna discuss about 5 common fraud scenarios. We're gonna talk some red flags that you should be looking out for, and some resources. I'm also going to end up sharing just some kind of some scams going on today, especially with COVID and different things as well. So first, let's start with the first scenario. This first scenario is a collection fraud. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the story, and it was provided by our Edward Jones Fraud Investigations team. This type of story, it's not unique. It unfortunately happens all the time. It plays out almost daily. And so I'll give you kind of the scenario here. So a client, Terry, she receives a call from an IRS agent, said, hey, Terry, you owe back taxes and you need to pay that outstanding debt immediately. Terry doesn't recall receiving a notice in the mail. She told the caller she thinks it's an error. Then the caller tells Terry, listen, if you don't pay this minimum amount of this outstanding debt, we can send the police out to you. Terry obviously doesn't believe that she owes the money. She thinks it might be a mistake, but hey, you know what? Even if it's a mistake, maybe she should even consider making that payment and then get the matter straightened out later on. Now the caller then says, hey, I can only accept payment over the phone. I can accept it through a credit card, or if you provide your checking account information, I can accept payment that way. In this scenario, Terry considers her next move. Although she believes that the person claimed to be from the IRS, an organization obviously she's heard of before and has authority in this type of thing, she just doesn't feel that something's right. So she asks for a number to call back and hangs up, calls a friend, asks a friend, and they determine, yes, this is something that she should not do. Okay, so obviously she should not be paying something over the phone that somebody's just calling her. So what can we be on the lookout? What are some red flags that we should be on the lookout for? First of all, be wary if you don't know or you can't verify that the person who's contacting you. One option right there is hang up the phone and call the IRS or reach out and say, hey, do I owe any back taxes? Now, you don't want to, if that person says, hey, call an 800 number or call this number to verify, you don't want to follow their guidance. Look on the website, go find a credible website and reach out to them that way. All right, so this is just the collection fraud. Now, it may not always be just, obviously, IRS, but it could be a utility company. So they could say, hey, you know what, we haven't gotten your electric payment or we haven't gotten your gas payment. We need you to pay this, otherwise it's getting turned off. And in the wintertime, maybe it's urgent. We need to get this thing turned on. You may fall prey to that. So how can you or a loved one obviously know that this is a scam? Look closely at that payment request. Where do you usually send your tax payment? A scammer might ask you to mail to a third party, give you a different address than the IRS. They may ask you to do a prepaid card and then read a phone number over the phone. That doesn't sound legitimate, right? Also, one big thing here is don't trust caller ID. If that caller ID comes in and says IRS, it might not really be that. More than likely it's not, because unfortunately, technology has come a long way and scammers actually have access to very sophisticated software where they can mask their actual information. So don't trust the caller ID. And obviously do your own investigation. IRS scams are popular during tax season. Like I said, utility companies might be during the winter time, but ultimately what they're trying to do is create a sense of urgency for you so that, and create something for emotions that you feel like you need to do something now. Otherwise there's going to be severe consequences. That's always what they're trying to do. And don't fall for scare tactics. If someone says, hey, I'm going to send a police officer to arrest you or something like that, that's not going to happen at all. So really that's the key there. All right, let's move on to another scenario. So this scenario might hit home just because it's a grandparent scam. This is something that happens. And so what scammers, they want to focus on your emotions. And because of that, they'll use personal information that they can gather to help validate their story and create that emotional bond. And they even provide personal information. And you may say, well, they shared this personal information with me. How else would they know that? And so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to read just like a fictional little script, a call between a grandfather and an unidentified caller. And so try to follow along with me, but it's just to give you this example. Okay, so the phone rings, caller says, hey, Grandpa, this is your favorite grandson. Can you guess which one? Grandpa says, well, is this Bobby? He said, yeah, Grandpa, it's Bobby. Hey, Bob. Hey, Grandpa, let me ask you something. Do you remember where I go to school? Grandpa says, of course I know. You go to Towson University. Well, how's school going for you? And the caller says, well, school's all right. And you know what, Grandpa, things are going okay, but I'm really sorry to call you about this, but I'm in a little bit of trouble. I was at school. My friends and I, we got together. We decided to take a trip down to Mexico for spring break. Things got a little wild. I was driving down the road. I was speeding a little bit, and I got arrested. And now I have this fine that I have to pay. But these ATMs don't work. I can't pay cash. I can't take money out of my cards. Would you be able to help me out and wire me some money? I'll definitely pay you back. But listen, Grandpa, please don't tell Mom and Dad, I really messed up. It's just a speeding ticket. I just want to come home. In this type of case, Grandpa would potentially be almost convinced, that he knows, hey, he thinks that this person, he knows what his grandchild's name is. He knows where the grandchild went to school. And it was really, you can see how a little bit of information was taken to validate this type of scam. So obviously in this situation, Grandpa finishes the call and something just doesn't feel right. So he reaches out to his financial advisor, says, hey, what should we do? We call fraud investigations. They say, hey, I'll tell you what you should do is go ahead and call Bobby. You got Bobby's cell phone number. Give him a call and confirm that and see what's going on. Calls Bobby. Obviously, Bobby's at school making A's. He's doing great. So it's not Bobby. It's a fraud. It's a scam. All right. So what are some of those red flags that come from that we can keep an eye on? Obviously, the first one, that request from Bobby is immediate in nature. It's so urgent. This needs to be done now. I need to wire it. Do you have your checking account information there? I just need some numbers. Do you have your credit card? I'll put that number in and I can pay this fine. So they create this urgency, this immediate nature type of thing. That's the first and foremost scam. That's the first and foremost part. But they may play also with their grandparents and say, hey, don't tell Mom and Dad. And that's really another aspect too, which is they want to make you keep it a secret. So they don't want you to share with anybody. They don't want you to call someone and verify that everything's okay. And obviously one other aspect is if they're successful and you do send them money, maybe you make a mistake, that's okay. You made a mistake, you send them money. Well, guess what's going to happen? They're going to do it again. And they're going to call you back and they're going to request for more. Something's become more serious, something's more critical. Oh, that fine that I paid with the speeding ticket, it didn't pay everything. We need to pay more. Or, say, for instance, it was a accident and someone got injured or hurt. Well, now it's more critical and now someone needs surgery and the doctor needs to be paid. So bottom line is if you fall prey to this, they know that you have fallen prey. And so they're going to say, let's call them back and try to milk this for all that we can get and really take advantage of somebody. All right. So what should you do if something like this happens? Remain calm, call your family member, call a loved one, see what's going on. Don't take advice from them. Go ahead and call Mom and Dad. Say, hey, I got a call from grandson. He's not doing well. And make sure that that's the case. Go ahead and verify it. It's more important to do that. All right, I'm going to share another scam here. This is another one here. This is the sweetheart scam. So this is a true story here. I'm going to share a true story about this. So New York authorities arrested a woman for the theft of thousands of dollars from an 85-year-old man in what experts refer to as that romance or the sweetheart scam. The two met online. They developed a close relationship over a short period of time. The woman befriended the man by telling him hard luck stories. She went as far to even say that she needed cancer treatment. And she persuaded him to not only give her some money, but also to sign over his power of attorney. At which point she used that ability to obtain a home equity loan and then stole funds from him. So this type of thing, there's red flags all over the place. First of all, if you're not able to identify who you're speaking with, especially with an online relationship, an online type of thing. So this happens a lot more often than you may realize. It's especially hurtful to those who are socially isolated, especially in times like now with COVID and everything as well. You may feel socially isolated and you want to talk to somebody, or if someone lost a spouse or a close family member or moved to a new community, it's easy to feel alone and feel sad, and scammers will take advantage of that and take advantage of that loneliness by pretending to care, when really all that they're ultimately after is money and to steal from you. And it's a really horrible thing. But here's the thing: scammers, they use so much technology now. They can use phone calls, emails, may mail you. They use social media messages like Facebook. They use dating websites, online games too. If you ever play like Words with Friends, something like that, you might build a relationship with someone that's online and start to feel like you can trust them, but you don't really know who they are. So, and that's what this fraud really, really is a focus on, is trust. They believe you. They might make you think that you've met them before, or that you have a mutual friend. They might say, oh yeah, they might get to know that you have a friend that you've gotten to know, and they say, oh, I know them too. Or they might ask you about what your interests are. Oh, I like playing with toy trains. Oh, really? I love toy trains too. Oh, tell me a little bit more about that. And it creates a relationship and a trust, and they feel rapport. They don't feel like they're getting taken advantage of, but they, again, really they are. So really, ways to protect yourself in this type of scenarios: do your research. The best defense is to, if you can't verify that somebody is who they are, be wary of them. Definitely don't give them any money in this type of scenario. Obviously, trusted social media sites seem like a good thing, but even then, those things can be hacked. You might have a friend on social media. They're able to pull a picture, create a profile, send you a message, send you a friend request, and you think that it's who they are, but maybe it's not really them, because all they had to do is pull a picture and then just reach out to you and start to talk to you about things. So really be cautious about anything over the internet. Is really something you need to be cautious about, especially. One way to also prevent something like this from happening would be, if they do ask for money, you might, and maybe you are thinking, I think this is legit. Like I feel like this is a friend of mine. They are in tough times. Maybe they need cancer treatment. They really do. And I want to help them. And I have the means to do so, and I want to help them. And I just want to verify that they are who they are. Well, what you could do is one aspect is you could always say, hey, if you talk to your financial advisor or someone that you trust, one aspect could be to say, well, hey, listen, I tried to take the money out, but what I'm going to need to do in order to wire it over to you is I need to get your driver's license. That's what they said I needed, is your driver's license. Or they said, I need your social security number. I need that information in order for me to send that to you. What that does is that will require them to provide some type of information about themselves. And if that's something they can't provide you, there's a red flag right there. That's another thing where they're not able to provide and prove that they are who they are saying that they are. So I think that's important. Again, photos, things like that can be manipulated, but at least if you get some documents like that, that's something that you can use a third party to verify that they are who they are. Absolutely. Another option, obviously, is just to refuse. If someone says, "Hey, listen, I'm in these tough times and I need some money. Can you wire me some money?" If you just refuse to do it, if that ends that relationship, was that a relationship really worth salvaging? Because they were willing to end it over some money. And I think that type of thing goes a long way to really help you identify, okay, is this something that is legitimate or not? So again, reach out to family, friends, unemotional listeners. Another thing you can do is you can contact local law enforcement, especially if something like this happens to you. Local law enforcement is a good resource. They might not be necessarily the ones to investigate down to the nitty gritty, but they'll get you to where you need to. So again, don't be fooled. Do your research, ask questions, make sure you're talking with a genuine person. All right. The next one, I'm actually going to skip this one just for time purposes, but generally this is a lottery sweepstakes scam. Hey, in a nutshell, if you win a lottery that you never entered, you probably didn't really win it. This reminds me of this also reminds me of the scams where someone said, "Hey, I'm a prince and you won. You just need to pay me some money and then I'll get you your prize." So this type of scam, it happens, but bottom line is, if you didn't play a lottery, you're not going to win that lottery. So definitely don't pay into something like that. All right, let's go down to the Social Security scam. I think this is one that resonates a lot right now, especially older adults, because Social Security is an important income benefit. And obviously that's something where it's not a surprise that is a source of income that scammers are after. Almost everybody collects Social Security. And so and actually I did a presentation at one of the arbiters, and the director there shared with us her experience in having something like this happen. And I think that's critical, that this does happen. And this happens to not just you. I mean, this happens to a lot of people, and you need to be wary of it. So in this type of scenario, they might receive a call from somebody claiming that they're from the Social Security Administration, and then they might say, "Hey, there's a problem with your number, and we, first of all, we need to just verify that we're talking to the right person. Go ahead and let me know what your Social Security number is, please." Or additionally, they'll say, "Hey, you know what? There's fraudulent activity with your Social Security number. We need to verify it. Otherwise, we're going to suspend your benefits. And so we need you to provide this information to us. Otherwise, we're going to suspend your benefits." And oh my gosh, creating scare, creating fear right there. So let's share a scenario, which is, Barb receives a phone call from Social Security Administration. Person on the other end of the phone tells Barb that her number is tied to money laundering. Benefits are in jeopardy. Caller went on to tell Barb that they would have to pay a fee so that everything can be straightened out. Barb, not wanting to lose that critical source of income, becomes flustered, but also realizes that something's just not right. Since when does Social Security call you directly? And also, it just doesn't feel right that she should have to pay a fee for falling victim to a crime. So just something just doesn't resonate well with her. So she takes a breath. She says, "Okay, let me get your number and I'll call you back." And then the person just hangs up. So obviously they don't want her to call her back because that's not going to work. So this type of scam, it's becoming more and more prevalent. I have some really interesting facts right here. I want to share this with you because this is one of the last scenarios I want to share with you because it is so impactful. So it's becoming more and more prevalent. And in 2017, so in 2017, the Federal Trade Commission heard from about 3,000 people about Social Security scams and that they lost $210,000. So 2017, 3,000 people, $210,000. In 2019, they heard from more than 35,000 people, almost 12 times more, that they had lost over $10 million. So it went from $210,000 to over $10 million. So you see where this is something that's really important to understand and know that this is something that's out there. Again, I appreciate you guys being able to educate yourself and know about these types of things. So this type of scam, they're exploiting your fears. They're trying to get you to provide their social security number. You know, it goes as far as they might say, hey, you need to make a payment. I need you to go purchase gift cards. Or if you have your cell phone or if you have your credit card, you can take a picture of the front and back of the credit card and send that to us. And that should be sufficient. We'll be able to take payment that way. Also, a recent twist on this is where the scammer will actually try to get you to withdraw all of your cash from your bank account for, quote, security reasons. Then you'll be advised to purchase gift cards with that cash so that the funds can be tracked and safeguarded. So they really get elaborate with these different scenarios. Red flags in this type of scenario, very similar to the ones we've already talked about. Unsolicited contact, sense of urgency, hey, send payment to this third party or send this to here. You know where the Social Security Administration is. You know, if you needed to actually make some type of payment to them, it would not be a different address. It wouldn't be a third party address. Let's see. And obviously, you would never have to pay anything legitimate with gift cards. So if anyone says, "Hey, pay me with some gift cards," you have to raise a red flag and say, "That doesn't sound right. Why do I have to pay with a gift card?" Because gift cards are for gifts. They're not for paying fines or fees or anything to any, government organization. And it seems very clear now when we're all calm and discussing it and thinking about it, and you're like, why would anyone be subject to that? But don't forget the urgency and the fear tactics that they use, and you think that it's legitimate, and you're like, okay, well, what should I do? What do I need to do? Send gift cards. Okay, I'll do whatever I need to do. That's the factor that we have to take into consideration. When those emotions are up, and you're not going to be able to get your Social Security check this month, and you're not going to be able to buy the things that you need, that's where that really comes into play. So what actions should you take? Hang up the phone. If a message was left, don't call them back. Look up that real number for the Social Security Administration in their office and find out. And you can call them and say, hey, listen, were you guys calling me? Is there a fraudulent activity on my Social Security number? They might say, oh, no, not at all. And then there's a situation where that's been something that's come up. Well, what if that happens, though? I do want to share that. So if that happens, what should you do? I think one of the number one things, again, you can call local law enforcement, get something like this to happen, because they might be able to do some investigations and figure out what's going on. You can also reach out to the Federal Trade Commission. They have a website, and I'll make sure I share that here, too, where you can actually go to the Federal Trade Commission and file a complaint that you've been a victim or you were subject to victim and they attempted it. Just because, again, you don't want something like this to happen to someone else. And if they're doing it to you, they're going to do it to somebody else. All right, so we already talked about the red flags. All right, so let's do just kind of a recap of some of those things we've talked about already. And then I also just want to mention, again, two more scenarios too. First of all, identity verification. So in this age of this digital contacts, things can be easily manipulated, information can be changed. Identity verification is more difficult than ever. Just because somebody sends you a Facebook friend request doesn't mean that's who they are. So being able to verify that somebody is who they are. I mentioned this earlier too. If this is something where someone calls you and says, well, listen, you can verify, call my boss. You know, hey, I'm with the Social Security Administration. This is what's going on. You know what? If you don't believe me, why don't you call my manager? Here's their number, 1-800-555 whatever. Don't use that number because they're giving you that number. You know, make sure you're suspicious about that, and I mean, and keeping focused on what you can do. All right, immediacy of request, urgency, creating that urgency. This needs to happen now. We need to get this taken care of now. Please help us. All right, and if it doesn't add up, you know, like I said, you can't win a lottery if you didn't enter. Also, be wary if cash needs to be wired to a third party, especially if it's supposed to be made out to a company. Why would you have to be wiring it to someone else? It just doesn't make sense. This is for BG&E, or this is for my utility company. Why do I have to send it to this person or this other company? Why can't I just send it directly to the utility company? That's another reason to think about, okay, maybe this is a fraud. Maybe a red flag needs to come up and we need to investigate it. And we need to hang up, stay calm, call somebody that we trust, and verify what's going on. If account statements or your credit card statements don't arrive when they should, or if you receive a check for no apparent reason and you're asked to pay money, that's a lot of times how those things work out too. Is they'll say, hey, congratulations, you won $10,000, and you say, oh, that's great. What do I need to do to get that $10,000? They'll say, well, in order to get that $10,000, I'll send you a check, but I need you to pay the taxes, and you need to pay the wiring cost, which is, it's $1,000 to pay that, but you're going to get $10,000 in return. So you might think, okay, I guess I don't understand why I have to pay my taxes first, but whatever. And that's where it just doesn't add up, and that's an important aspect there. Also, a vow of secrecy. That's the other red flag, a vow of secrecy. Don't tell mom and dad. Don't tell anybody. This is just between us. Or using the sweetheart scam. Hey, I don't want anybody to know what's going on with me. I'm getting cancer treatments and I don't want you to tell anybody. And they create that vow of secrecy and that trust where you think that you can protect yourself. All right, so I also want to take a moment now to share a couple other scams while this is up here, because these are ones that are going on right now. I don't have any slides for these, but if you go to the FTC website, those are one that shares some information that can keep you in the loop of what's going on. One of them is a COVID scam right now, because obviously that's what's on top of mind for everybody, is this coronavirus and what's going on. So what if you got a call from somebody that said, hey, listen, I have bad news to share with you, but someone you've been in contact with has tested positive for coronavirus. And what we're going to need to do is we're going to have to send out a test kit, and I'm going to have to mail you a test kit. And I just want to verify what your address is. What's your address? I get your address and say, okay, all right. And I'm going to send you this test kit. You have to do this within 7 days. You have to do this immediately, okay? Time is of urgency. I need to send this out to you, and you need to take this test and then send it back to me. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to send that out to you. And first, I just need to get a credit card number from you to pay for the test. And you might say, okay, well, where's this test? Because you're thinking about, the possibility of having coronavirus. You might go grab your credit card, or you might get your checking account information. And they take it, and then they say, okay, the test is $100 or $200, whatever it is. And people are paying this, and it's happening. And it's a scam. It's absolutely a scam, because they're trying to take advantage and prey on your emotions and your fear of that. And so that's, obviously that's very different than the whole, tracing and everything too. One other aspect of that one though too is you might say, oh no, who do I know that tested positive? Who tested positive? Can you tell me, please? And they might say, oh, no, we can't do that because of regulations. I can't share that privacy information. Privacy information is really important to us, and I don't want I can't share that with you. So that's one. Another one happened with back when, with the CARES Act and the stimulus payments. People were receiving stimulus payments, and it was actually happening in like assisted living communities and things like that, where someone who is on Medicaid receives a stimulus check, and that center or that facility was saying, hey, no, 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 you can't get that money. That's not for you because you're on Medicaid. That's for us. We have to keep that. And so then they were actually taking and keeping that money and telling them, you have to sign that over to us. You have to sign those checks over to us. So there's so many different scenarios out there that happen. And I thought those two are important to just mention, because you may have a friend or a family member who may have fallen prey to that, and we need to make sure that we protect them. And also, obviously, with this whole COVID scare and coronavirus, we want to be on the lookout and be very mindful of what people may try to do to us. All right. So again, protect yourself, protect those that you love. What can you do? We've talked about the red flags, but what else can we do? What common steps can we take to protect yourself? Always be mindful and protect your personal information. Be cautious online. Be cautious with what we do online. Be cautious with what information we share. Protect your credit card information. Protect your bank account information. And also just, be diligent with compromised accounts. I forgot to mention this earlier, guys, but if anyone has any questions, and we're almost getting to the end here, we still have 20 minutes, so we got plenty of time to answer questions. And I forgot to mention this, but if anybody has had something like this happen to them and they wanted to share it with the group, I encourage you to type it under the question and answer. Just to share with people that, hey, it can happen to anybody, and that's again what the mission of today's topic is this can happen to anyone. These scenarios happen to everybody. Don't feel discouraged. Don't feel embarrassed that something like this happens. You're better to be mindful and to share with others that this is going on, so that we can protect yourself and protect others from it too. Again, back to the slides here in front of me. I'm sorry, I'm jumping back and forth a little bit, but protect yourself, protect those that you love, be cautious online, protect your credit card information. And, if you do have accounts that have been compromised, be cautious, be diligent, change your passwords online, make them complicated. Don't have a password with just your birthday or your name or anything like that. Make it complicated. Also check back with credit too. You can always check with your credit card, your credit report, and make sure that you don't have anything going odd there. Just check and make sure that there's no credit cards opened up in different names, or a credit card that you don't recognize, just in case somebody got a hold of your information and actually opened up a credit card. All right, so then the last thing here, I just want to share some resources available. I already mentioned the Federal Trade Commission. I think that's a great starting point, the FTC website. They have great information to share, good ways to to educate yourself and be on the lookout for what's going on. Again, there is where you can file a complaint if something has happened to you, or if somebody tried to get something to happen to you. Friend of mine's a police officer, and he said the same thing. He said, yeah, absolutely. If something like this were to happen, reach out to your local law enforcement. You don't have to call 911, but you can definitely call the non-emergency number, tell them what's going on, and they'll get you to where you need to be. And additionally, so I think with that, I think what we're going to do is I'm going to actually open it up. Let me move something over here too, and I'm going to pass it back over. But if there's any follow-ups or any questions that anyone has, feel free to reach out directly to me. I'm happy to answer any questions, as well as one thing I will mention while I still have the floor too is we're going to be doing ongoing webinars like this, including market updates and things. And I have a schedule on our website, and that's just edwardjones.com/John-Dove. So feel free to reach out to me or join in on any of those webinars. Back to you, Melissa. I don't know if we have any questions. I know I was late to share that with everybody. Hopefully someone was able to jot some things down.
They are coming in hot right now, John. You're doing an excellent job. So we'll let you take a quick drink of water if you want to just rest your voice for just a second. And I'll, again, as the questions are starting to fly and come in, to let everybody know that if you want to join the conversation, absolutely feel free to do so. You can go down to the button that says Q&A at the bottom of your screen and just type out your question for John, or as he mentioned earlier, feel free to share any experiences that you have had or maybe family members have had as it relates to scams and scammers. I mean, the more the merrier here, guys. The more we share, the more we learn. And this is what this is all about today, to learn and to this is not about fear. We don't want to instill fear in anybody, but this is all about facts. And you share facts and information and can certainly help others by doing so. So John, first question comes from Joe, and Joe wants to know, how can you tell us, or what can you tell us about scammers stealing the deed for your house? He says, I understand that it isn't hard to get a copy of a deed, and Joe is exactly right. That is public information. You can pull that up online for anybody. Scammers, as he said, can sign your name and then perhaps sell your home. They can borrow on the house or resell it. So what can you do to protect yourself there?
That's exactly right. And like you just said, they can take out home equity loans or something like that and use that as proof that they own the home, especially if they get some of that financial information. That's a tough question though, Joe. I don't have that. I don't have a specific answer except for being mindful and keeping things tight to your, having the deed, having everything with you. But I'll be honest, I haven't encountered that before. So I would have to send you to FTC to see what else we could do and see if there's something on that. Or Joe, if you send me information, if this is something that maybe you're concerned has happened, I'd be happy to follow up and get you that answer, or Melissa too. I'd be happy to follow up and get that answer to you.
Yeah, and again, your information is up there for everyone to see, your telephone number, your email address. We'll keep that up through the end of the webinar. And let's see, guys, we've got about 15 minutes, so plenty of time here. So we had one question, John. Now I want to get to a quick story here from somebody who is sharing their experience. This comes from Sarah. And Sarah says that my identity was stolen years ago before Social Security. She said it was compromised by an employee at a credit union and money was taken from her savings account. She says I was able to send the police detective in that direction and they actually caught the person.
That's great.
So that is fantastic, but it just goes to show that these people are really in our everyday lives at the credit union, as Sarah pointed out. They're via email, all over the internet, it seems like. And on that end, John, we do have a question. And Angela says, you didn't mention as much maybe about computer scams. And maybe what she's talking about here, a lot of our seniors, they are on medication, would like to find maybe cheaper versions of their medication, which can get very expensive. And you have so many websites out there that claim to have these cheap prices on these pharmacies online. What do you tell people in terms of maybe their drugs or their medications? Should they trust these online pharmacies?
So if it's a reputable site, that can be the challenge, because they can also kind of replicate a site and make it look reputable. And you're thinking that you're entering the correct information, you're entering your credit card information into an online platform that you feel like you could trust. But it's maybe the digits off or something's just a little bit off on the web address. And that is something that we have to be mindful. I would encourage just to stick to anything reputable that you've been using. Also, same thing, if it doesn't seem right, it probably isn't. So if they're asking, if your pharmacy or your medication typically costs $100 and they're offering you a good deal for $9.99, it's probably not accurate, and it's probably not the correct place.
Yeah, and that goes to the old adage of if it's too good to be true,
Yep.
it probably is. It's probably not legitimate.
The other thing I just say is
Answer.
with online, and absolutely, you've got to be cautious about how much information you share. And again, using those reputable sites, if you're putting in your credit card number, you really just need to be cautious about the places that we put that in. And, using the social media platforms, we put a lot of information out there. And, you're telling people that you're going on vacation, or you're telling people that you're going here or going there. And you have, oh, I love my grandkids. I love Bobby and Joe. And then someone calls you and says, hey, I wanted to talk to you about Bobby and school and what's going on. So you put a lot of information out there. And if we're putting a lot of information out there on those online platforms, we need to be cautious about what if somebody uses that to manipulate.
And on the heels of that, John, before we move on to another topic as we stay online here, what can somebody do to protect their account so that they can still enjoy all of the things that we all love so much about social media, but also stay safe?
One thing I'd suggest is you can create some privacy settings. And so if you're not able to do that, talk to maybe somebody who would be able to assist you with it as to how to adjust your privacy so that it's only friends or family members that you invite to be friends on your platform. That's one way. Additionally, changing your passwords frequently. It's a good rule of thumb to make those changes and make them complicated too. It's no surprise that they say use uppercase, a lowercase, some numbers, something that doesn't make sense. The reason you do all that is because they have very sophisticated password breakers where they can come in and just run all sorts of software to figure out what your password is. And if it's something very simple like password, which unfortunately people do that just so they can remember it, that's going to get broken into, and then they're going to have access to your information.
Great answer. Okay, thank you for that question, Angela. And now we move to Patty. And Patty has a really good question here. And this goes back to what you were saying about COVID, because this is top of mind for everybody, John. She writes, recently a student from a private school in the area tested positive for COVID-19. When the contact tracers attempted to contact parents, many, quote, blew them off because they thought they were scammers.
Right.
What is the correct protocol so people can be assured that legitimate contact tracers are attempting to contact them?
I know locally in our area, they're doing a lot of promotions as to, hey, if this number calls you, and I think it says COVID-19, if this number calls you, accept the call because of that, because they're trying to do more outreach and they want to make sure that they can verify it. I think the number one thing with that would be, if they're just calling you to talk to you and they're not asking for money and they're not trying to get anything and they're trying to share information with you, absolutely take that call, and you need, especially in times like today, it doesn't hurt to be a little bit more cautious and say, hey, what's going on? I want to hear what you have to say. It says COVID-19 on the, on the caller ID. Let's take the call. The moment they're asking for gift cards or they're asking for something else or pay a fee, okay, red light, red flag, we need to make a change. But definitely outreach and trying to educate as many people as possible. You can tell just even from a public service perspective, that's why there's commercials out there. Accept those calls when those calls are coming through.
Great. So we've been going back and forth questions and experiences, and now we'll go to another experience. And Randy writes, he said, today I received a text message saying they came across a parcel from June pending for him. And they said, kindly claim ownership and confirm for delivery here. And he said it was a gibberish link. He said he did not click on the link. But that is so common.
Right. Yeah, it's such a common thing to do. And again, I get those. Melissa, I'm sure you've gotten those things.
Yes.
Everybody gets these things. And you just have to look at it and just either delete it or realize, you know what, I never reached out to some parcel. never did any of that stuff. There's nothing I should be doing there, and I should definitely not, not click that link. And another reason why they click those links is to either create some type of virus, or to somehow, maybe that's the virus where it comes in and starts to mirror your screen. There's so much more like technology side of those things, where if you click a link, now they're going to put a little bug and they can actually mirror your screen and watch you type. And like, that's beyond my pay grade, I'll be honest, but those things are real and those things happen. And that's where we need to be mindful, and absolutely don't click those things if it's a gibberish link, if it just doesn't seem right, if it's not something that, it is familiar.
And on the heels of that, I know, John, when we talked earlier this week, I had an email that was sent to me that looked legitimately from PayPal. And I do purchase items from eBay, which uses PayPal, and had done so recently, and received an email from them stating I had multiple purchases and to click this link if I wanted to dispute them. And so I immediately opened my laptop because I saw it on my phone. And instead of clicking on the link, I just went immediately to my PayPal account and logged into the official account and found out there were no charges there. It was a phishing email. So I guess another answer to that also, if you're in doubt, just go to the legitimate website. Go to Amazon.com and check that way. Go to PayPal.com, check that way. Go to eBay. Go to the official sites before you click on anything that comes into your email. So great advice, John.
Exactly. Same thing. I had a credit card. I myself too had a credit card that I must have purchased with something. And all of a sudden I was like, oh, it was a Verizon charge. And it was like a couple $100. And I was like, wow, that just seems like a lot of money. I didn't think my Verizon bill was that much. And then I called them and they said, oh yeah, you also have a pizza delivery from Pizza Hut over in California. And you have this other thing. And so all these different things that obviously I don't have anything to do with. And I was able to call the credit card company, and they were able to dispute the charges and cancel everything and give me a new card number.
It's everywhere. It affects everyone and everybody, seniors or not. We are surrounded, it seems like, by people who are constantly just trying to get something for nothing. We have a question here from Janae, and she wants to know, what should someone do once they already fall victim to a scam?
So if you fallen victim, I think the underlying message today is, do not feel embarrassed. This happens to everybody. So if you have fallen victim, you should talk to someone that you trust. You should talk to someone that can help you take action. If it's something where it's one of these types of scams, where it's a consumer scam, I encourage you to reach out to the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, or the local law enforcement. But it isn't always that. Sometimes it's something a little closer to home. Maybe a family member is taking advantage, or a loved one is taking an advantage, and you just don't feel right. You don't know how to handle this. With those types of situations, I encourage you to talk to someone else that you can trust, so that you can get action taken. And whether that's a way where you can pursue legal activities or what have you to get your money back. But underlying thing is, don't be embarrassed. You need to tell someone you can trust. That would be my advice.
Excellent. We've got just a couple minutes left, and I have one experience to share, and then I've got one more question for you, John. Sure. So Mary Jane sent to us that AT&T stated her account was past due and the service would be cut off. She said, I knew this was not correct, and she called AT&T directly, and they said that she was correct and that the service representative asked that she forward the text to them because it was coming from a scammer. So again, somebody who was thinking on their toes immediately that day and decided to go directly to the source, and the source told them what she already knew. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I appreciate everyone sharing these stories, because we can only cover so much information. There's so much out there that someone, this might resonate with somebody. So I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then the last question we have, and this, you see advertisements for this a lot, How do you feel about LifeLock? John, do you recommend it?
I don't recommend anything on that front. I guess it depends on everybody's situation and what they're looking for. I would think that if you can find someone that you trust to talk to, have your own power of attorney. If you can have certain things in line and you feel as if you can trust somebody, that's more powerful than utilizing an organization like that. So I'm not going to recommend or not say to go that direction.
Okay. Well, John, you have been fantastic and a wealth of information today. And again, if maybe you just didn't feel comfortable sharing an experience that happened to you or something that may be happening right now, but would like some help or would like to talk to John, you can see his information is still up on the screen. John Dove, financial advisor. He's got his telephone number here as well as his email account. And we certainly appreciate you taking the time to share your experiences and your knowledge with all of us. Thanks, John.
Absolutely. Thank you all, and everyone stay safe.
Yeah. And for the rest of you who are watching, we, of course, want to thank you for being a part of this conversation. This is why we do this every single month, to share information and hope that we can help somebody out one video or one webinar at a time. So if you want to check out the rest of our content, you can head on over to www.seniorlivinglive.com. Thanks for watching, everybody. And as always, have a fantastic day.